All right. I said I'm going to try to do this today, okay? I'm going to try to hold on. I'm coming. Do this today, all right? So today, let me get a sip of coffee, child. Oh, here we go. If I curse in this video, then, just let you know it's in me to do so. I just try not to on the camera. It's in me, though. I ain't above it. So, yeah, today I'm going to be talking about my reading of Slay by Laurell Hamilton, okay? This is book number 30 in her Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series. Now, Slay, she released 2 books in 2023. Smolder, the first part of Slay, you can say came out in March. And then here we go with Slay, which concludes the story that began in Smolder, releasing here upon us in November 2023. So, as we know, Slay is book number 30 in the series. It has to do with vampire huntress Anita Blake. Anita Blake spends the majority of her time, yes, hunting vampires, but the majority of her time, let's go ahead and keep it real, she spends sleeping with the vampires, sleeping with the werewolves, the were-rats, the were-turtles, the were-eagles, the were-hawks, the were-snakes, whatever is a viable power source, which is pretty much everything but a human. It's fodder for her bed. Now, Laurell Hamilton has kind of pushed some of that aside in recent books, but the attraction for Anita being the most powerful, well, we'll just say the HBIC of St. Louis is a preternatural scene is there. She's the Mary Sue. Now, what happened in Smolder is a number of different things. Number one, we are still in the crux of Anita trying to get her wedding to Jean-Claude together. Jean-Claude is the master of the city. I think he's the master of North America, but to keep it safe, he's the master of St. Louis. The necromancer and the vampire are getting married. They've been talking about this crap for books at this point, and I'm so over it. Get married, go away, march into the sunset, and go away. Tired of talking about the wedding, sick of going through it. But anyway, as always, there is some nefarious being who is out to stop them. And that is in the form of a vampire demigod named Deimos. Deimos has the ability to turn into a dragon. And so he's kind of a new, or is touted kind of as a new and exciting threat to Anita Blake and her harem. So naturally he wants to take Anita for his own bride, capture her as his own power source because she's all powerful in a lot of ways. And of course that would subsequently push Jean-Claude out of the running to being the master of North America and St. Louis. So that's where it all boils down to. And like I said, it's a continuation of the book Smolder. So a lot of the lead-ins are from Smolder, but honestly, neither one of them are just plotted well enough to me. But I think that at the 30 book mark, in having read these books for so long, the plot elements are being watery or diluted or not exactly taut and in shape is to be expected. Laurell Hamilton spent the majority of her years covering for the deficiency in plot with filling her page counts with sex scenes that are quote unquote still prominent to the plot in terms of delivering story elements that push it forward. We'll leave it like that. But Anita sleeps with somebody, she gets a power, whatever. I'm not really here to rag on that anymore. The younger me would have, but as I've gotten older and still decide to read these books after a certain amount of years, I don't care. I really don't. I don't care. There's nothing to be really too complex to be expected from these books. They're just, and I don't like using these type of terms, but just entertainment. I guess you can say I don't really like that. That's not fair to me when it comes to almost any book. But nonetheless, I don't know how to take them as seriously of reads as I once did. So with Slay being said, I actually didn't think this book was as bad. Well, I won't say bad. I didn't think it was as irritating, we'll say, because I can't write a book, so I don't want to try to profess or imply that I can know a good book from a bad book necessarily, although I could. But I don't think it was as irritable of a reading experience for me. For whatever reason, I think I was okay. But the alarm bells continue to ring. And there are several things that just continue to drive me crazy about this series that I wish the author would put in the grave and let the shit go. So, first, we need to just look at one clear element here, is that we finally see Anita Blake interacting and engaging with her family on stage. They're no more sort of limited to some anecdote that she shares throughout the books. They're actually present and on stage. She meets them at the airport at the beginning of the book, and we start. What irritated me in this portion is that although her family did not kind of drive me crazy as much as I thought they would have, what irritated me was that Laurell Hamilton insists on giving this backwards, bigoted mind frame to characters who, majority speaking, are outside of Anita Blake's preternatural realm. So we have Anita Blake meeting her father, biological father, her stepmother, her stepsister, I think it's her stepbrother, and her grandmother. And right from the jump, we're zeroing in on Anita Blake's stepmother, Judith, and her stepsister. And Anita, more specifically speaking, the author just has to highlight how the mother and the daughter are blonde, how the mother and daughter wear pink, and how the mother and daughter are dressed alike, although the daughter is completely well into an adulthood. You know, that just kind of like was one of those things like, this is so irritating to read about because it's so old. It's so old-fashioned of a notion, old-fashioned of a thought, that this right here is just another clear indicator of Anita wanting to get on stage to say that I'm so tragically different. The blonde people get everything. I thought that they had everything, and I'm so tragically different, and I never could connect. You know, the angstiness. We're kind of over that. We can kind of let that go. That can go. Now, there is, granted, Laurell Hamilton did not make Anita Blake's stepmother and stepsister as standoffish about Anita Blake's, I guess you could say, her sex life, or her in general, as standoffish as I thought they were going to be. But nevertheless, that ideal, that notion was still there. I'm so over the fact that Anita feels so tragically different than everybody. And it's irritating on the fact that she is in her early 30s, but Laurell Hamilton has stopped her age. So Anita is completely, I think always at this point, from the beginning of the series, which the first book was published in 1993, 30 years ago, she's still stuck in the age of 32. So she's kind of like the world around her keeps moving, but it kind of doesn't. And with Anita being stuck, one of the things that it's kind of showing itself is that the ideas surrounding Anita are stuck. It's almost like there's no way that we can climb out of the early 90s and the 80s on behind, all the way up to like the 50s and 60s. This character, this tone, whatever you have, is still stuck in that. The writer, the author, and I blame it on the author, she still have her character's mind frame stuck in like the 50s and the 60s. And it's absolutely freaking annoying. It is so annoying to just kind of witness this. It's annoying. So Anita Blake's father, of course, he is extraordinarily, walled off in terms of accepting who she is, who she wants to marry, typical stuff. But I think that one of the things that Anita Blake or the author did want to completely go overboard and express is that of Anita Blake's grandmother. Anita Blake's grandmother is this fiery religious person who every chance she gets, she shoots off and try to shoot at Anita Blake's neck about Anita Blake's sexual life, who she's getting married to, all of this stuff. My thing about that is that is to be expected. And it's to be expected of this character, it's to be expected of this author, but it is also disappointing at the same time. Like, once again, there's no progression with these characters. They pretty much, all of Anita Blake's family, they approach and come on stage precisely as you are conditioned as the reader to expect them to come as per the author's track record. It's always the same. I didn't knock something over. It's always the same. And that to me was disappointing. And see, even with the grandmother character, because she did play a minor but kind of a interesting variable in the story toward the end, that was something, her actions or behavior at the end, that was something that I found so interesting and intriguing and so a little different that I felt like the author left that potential on the table for us. That is where the depth would have been if we would have went further into that, but she didn't do that. So I really got to keep it vague, but at the same time, like always, I do want to just kind of just spell it all out. But the interesting things that do happen to crop up in some of her books, or specifically talking about Slay, does not get that full undressing, full unbagging, to go into realms that are outside of the usual playbook that we see within this series. So I'm keeping it vague, but the grandmother character was a lot more interesting than the author just left the potential for that away on the wayside. That was unfortunate. So the other thing that really is bugging me, that gets on my nerves about these books, is I'm so sick and tired of Anita Blake's, I'm putting it on the author. I'm sick and tired of the subject of amorous, Anita Blake being polyamorous. We are over it. It is decades now at this point, multiple decades at this point, where this subject matter, this conversation, this argument, this topic is completely always stuck in, stapled, ingrained into every single argument presented within each book. Nobody here, at least in 2023, gives a freaking frack, you know what, about Anita Blake being polyamorous. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit about the character of Anita Blake being polyamorous. Nobody cares. It is a dead subject. Absolutely dead. And it brings me back to how I felt when I was reading Smolder, where at the end of the book I was just like, there's absolutely no depth to be grasped out of these books. Like, there's nothing to contemplate at the end. There's no complexity. There's nothing. There's just these regurgitated arguments about old concepts, old notions, old shit. Being one of them being the unacceptance of a polyamorous relationship. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, Anita Blake is stuck at 32. The series started in 1993. Obviously something is, the buttermilk ain't clean there, because we're still stuck in this. But I just wish that it would go away. It is so annoying to read these books, and in every book, generally when Anita is arguing with people outside of the preternatural community, the argument is always about her polyamorous lifestyle. Nobody gives a crap. Even as the readers, we don't care. Nobody cares. I don't care. I never really had an issue with the sex in the books. I think the thing that bugged me when it came to the sex is that it was obviously a page filler. They were to fill a page count, to get a page count up, and just to stall things out. Because a lot of times with these books, the events happen within a day, and we're in these conversations that last page after page and chapter after chapter. Hence, the subject of polyamorous relationships is constantly like this dark cloud hovering over the series, over each book. Such an engaging topic that nobody cares about it at this point. Nobody cares anymore. So I wish the author would catch Anita Blake up to 2023. Anita Blake needs a complete growth spur. Like, she should be in her 50s or so now, 60s, something like that. It doesn't matter. She could at least be 40s, at least, given that it's literature, or make believe, at least in the 40s. This is such a dead horse. that this author keeps going on, and it's just like, do you really get emails from fans that are constantly berating you for making the series, Anita Blake polyamorous? Like, why do you want to keep going on about this? Nobody cares at this point. That's another thing. So, like I said, that lack of depth and complexity is it's stonewalled because there seems to not be anything to talk about other than Anita Blake being polyamorous. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. And I just had to get that off my chest. Like, I'm so sick of it. I'm sick and tired of it. Now, the third thing, that I think the final thing, because I don't want to go too long on this video, is the villain. So Deimos is a demigod who can transform into a dragon. I know Laurell K. Hamilton was reaching for epicness. She was trying to reach outside of what you probably normally would see in urban fantasy, but I'm more than positive some of the other players out there really got the game going down. I'm sorry to say, a little bit more craftier with their plots, that sort of thing. Deimos, the thing is that I can only really give her credit for creating a new villain. Other than that, I did not find him as magnetic or crafty or insidious as maybe some of the villains in the earlier books. I think the thing is that I did find interesting was that he did overwhelm Anita, which is usually kind of difficult to do in this series as a whole, because Anita is so all-powerful, Mary Sue. But he did manage to do that, and I think that was an attempt to knock Anita down a peg. You can't have an all-powerful airtight air tank main protagonist, plot armor main protagonist. So yeah, he did kind of overcome Anita Blake with the usual headaches and mind tricks. I call them the delusions, the illusions, the headaches, the mind trick, all the mind crap, the stuff that we go over and all again, the mind stuff. And it did, the people that worked with him were kind of interesting, but that for the majority, they're all just tools that are going to be pulled into Anita's web, into her bed, people that she's going to sleep with. And the ideal on top of that is that there are some spies or an infiltrating force within Anita's camp. That's another thing the surrounding characters, like me personally, I don't care anything about. Like, what's that, Wicked and Truth? They're just names on the page to me. Honestly, all these different bodyguard characters, couldn't care less about them. Don't mean anything. But what Anita Blake, or what the author did, was, of course, he overcame Anita Blake, Deimos. But what she did that was interesting, I think, is that she stripped Anita of one of her core magical abilities, one that we as readers have grown absolutely exhausted with over these last decades. So he stripped her of it and replaced it with something else. But by the end of the book, everything kind of got pulled back to normal. Anita regained that power source, and we were more or less back to where we began at the beginning of the book. And I found that to be incredibly frustrating, because not because of my complaints about this power source, but because for all the years we as readers spent listening to the character's angst and bemoan and use it and go on and on about it, you didn't have the edge to at least give us about 2 or 3 books before Anita Blake and her crew could figure out how to remedy that situation. Instead, you gave her the power right back. So it's almost like, what do we go through all of this for? Because in the next book, we're going to be doing what? Talking about that, talking about polyamorous, talking about the same shit all over again. In the next book, it's going to be the same stuff. You have the opportunities to set a different precedence, to set a different stage, to reset the game, talking about who was in the group who are spies and betrayals and all that stuff about these characters who me personally couldn't care less about. Some of the other readers may love them. I was just like, I don't know who these wicked truth. I don't care. And these other people over here, I don't care. Asher, Kane, and all these people, don't care, because they all serve the same purpose, which is to bodyguard Anita and subsequently sleep with her. That's it. Their existence as characters revolve around Anita Blake. They're not going to, go to Mazda to finance a car. We're not witnessing them going to do that. We're not witnessing them opening up a restaurant. We're not witnessing them trying to reconnect with their family or anything like that. Their being has nothing to do with anything other than orbiting around Anita Blake. So to me personally, I don't find them interesting. Other readers may, but I don't. It's like one book I was reading where she described Anita was getting a vision of one character walking down the street. I'm like, well, where was he walking down the street to? That was never explained. He was just walking down the street. Why? Because his whole sole existence is to be there in connection with Anita Blake. So that's a problem. That's why I don't really have that investment in any of these side characters. So when you're telling me somebody within the camp is betraying the group, the camp, or Anita's harem and all this kind of stuff, I'm just like, well, let them do it. That's what I'm saying. I'm just like, well, let him do it. And I hope he get away with it. And I hope he destroys it, because things need to be shaken up. But like I said, at the end of this book, things were shaken up a little bit, and then they were back to where we started. So a lot of great ideas, or potentially great ideas, were left on the table. And that's really unfortunate. It's just the same thing. We're going to go into the next book with a whole different villain talking about the same thing. It's going to be the exact same thing. I guess the only thing that came out of it is that now the master, John Claude, the master vampire of the city, does have a new ability. But that's just kind of greed to me. That's just like a greedy thing to me. It's sort of like Anita Blake as a character is never aging, which I look at it more like a vanity. The author's keeping her stuck at 32 as a vanity, as a means of vanity. But like that's just like what I'm saying. It's just like it's extra greed on the Mary Sueism that surrounds the entire book series. So it's just like, whatever. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna have a wedding in this atmosphere. But guess what? We've been waiting since over a decade for this supposed wedding to happen. It's just like, move on. But that's kind of all that I really want to say about Slay. It was a reach for some epicness, but I think that some authors pretty much already superseded the abilities of Slay to be an epic urban fantasy read. And that's okay. That's okay. I think that at its core, the Anita Blake series is just what it is. Like I said, I've literally been reading these books since June of 2007. So that has been a good long time. I still remember when I first started reading the books, and I'm okay with that. They are nostalgic reads. I'm a completionist at heart. They frustrate me. I've grown from being frustrated by a lot. I do love having this platform to express these things, and that's one of the reasons why I make this video, is because a lot of times people will write me and be like, my Anita Blake centered videos, they'll write me and be like, hey, yeah, I know what you're talking about, and things like that. But just unless you're like a diehard fan of the series, you'll probably be left just in that gray space that I'm always seeing with the books. Like, I just kind of read them, enjoy what I can, leave the rest behind, and roll my eyes consistently throughout each book. And I think that honestly, I think that that's okay. That's an okay place to be. I don't have any more expectations of anything, greatness or otherwise, because I've grown as a reader, and the author can continue to talk about the same things. If that's what she chooses to do, then continue to do that. I'll still read the next one, continue to do that, because I know that at this point I have this over here as well, so I'll always be a fan. And just kind of it, you know. So that is it. Slay was just slay. It was just slay, girl. It was just slay. I mean, it wasn't giving me Buffy. You know, it wasn't giving me Buffy season 3 finale. You know, as in terms of slaying a dragon. You know, if you kind of think about that, but you know, it didn't have the complexity of Buffy. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we gotta really look into it, it can't touch that. But you know, who knows? Bye.